Welcome to another episode of AISD Extra. We're excited to have actually just Mr. Edwards here as our main guest because we're going to spend this podcast speaking about the bond that we have coming up. It's the 2025 bond, and I just want to welcome you, Mr. Edwards, for taking the time to come really talk in detail about the bond.
Absolutely, Hannah. I'm very happy to be here, very happy to discuss about our 25 bond referendum, and we'll give out the information that I believe our voters need to be able to make the choice in what they choose for us to do.
Right, and I want to kick it back a little bit because I think in order to understand where we are now, let's talk a little bit in the past. So we've had a 2019 bond, a 22 bond. Can you speak to the history and about the success of those bonds?
Right. I think the first thing when you talk about success of those bonds is we were able to do projects that are really good, nice projects that are really great for students. So when you talk about the CTE Center, a new transportation center, which was part of the 2019 bond, along with the new softball complex, those are all facilities that are kid-centered,
right,
and benefit our students. When you talk about the 22 bond, which was the two new schools along with some other projects, again, kid-centered, it's about our students. I think the other thing that's really important to remember when we do bond election is when the community approves bond money to go into our schools, that is local money that stays local. It goes nowhere else. We don't have to pay that out to anybody else. It strictly goes to Angleton ISD students only. And so that's very important when we talk about doing bonds. Bonds are an investment our community makes in our schools and our school children's and our future. And so I think you have to look at bonds in that context. I think the other thing in Angleton, what we really try to strive and have tried to do and been successful doing is not impacting the tax rate on our community homeowners. In 2018, a year before the first bond in 2019 was passed, the tax rate that Angleton ISD set was at $1.45. Today, after going through two bond elections, and with each bond election, what our promise to our community would be is that we would not raise the tax rate. We have actually lowered the tax rates down to $1.02. Now, part of that's been done by the Texas legislature and what they've done with new laws, but it's also been done through what we've done as a district. We have consistently lowered our tax rate to our community, even though we've passed these two bonds. And so when we're talking about the 25 bond, we're talking about doing the same thing. What we're putting out there is the maximum possible tax rate we will set for the next 5 years will be that same tax rate it is today at $1.02. We actually believe we're going to be able to continue to lower it due to the economic conditions that exist in our community, new homes being built, and some other strategies we have to lower it as well. And so again, I think those 2 points are what really helped the 19 and the 22 bond be successful. It's community money that goes to our schools, our kids. We've lowered the tax rate, and we've been able to produce really good projects that meet our community needs.
And again, you said that tax rate went from like 1.45 to 1.2?
Right.
And that's a 42 cent drop.
42 cent drop in the tax rate, yes.
Okay, keeping with the backstory of the 25 bond, walk me through the process of how we got to calling for the bond referendum.
Right. This is not something that comes up that we just do, let's go do it, right?
Right.
A couple of things happened. One, when we did the 22 bond, there was a lot of discussion about replacing North Side and South Side at that time among our community advisory committee, which is a community committee made up of 50 plus people.
Right.
The decision at that time was to not do that. It was to go and build
Heartland
and Heritage. Part of the reason for building Heritage is our current junior high had 1,600 kids and it was going to grow, and the community felt that 1,600 kids in a junior high was way too many.
They definitely felt it was like a safety kind of security situation.
Right. They wanted a junior high smaller. Research shows that junior high shouldn't be any bigger than 1,200 kids, and that's what we built Heritage at. That's what the Community Advisory Committee wanted us to do, and that's what we've done. So going back to how we got here then also is we put together a strategic planning committee 5 years ago in 2021, and we talked about different pillars of part of that strategic planning committee. One of those pillars that we looked at was facilities. And the strategic planning committee wanted us to do a facility audit of every facility in the school district. What's the condition of the facility? What needs to be repaired? What are the possible cost of repairs? And how long would our buildings last? When will we have to replace them? And so we went through that process about 22 months ago, a little less than 2 years ago. And coming out of that audit was what's called a facility condition index. And 3 schools were recommended to be replaced because their facility condition index was deemed to be too high.
Yeah.
That it would be more sense fiscally to replace the schools than to long-term to go in and repair them, continue to repair them as things break down, and then have to replace them in the future. The replacement cost in the future would be much higher after you had already put a lot more money into those
and
three
just
facilities.
the repair, on the constant repair of those schools.
Absolutely,
right?
Absolutely. And I think a lot of times people think we don't do maintenance on these buildings. We don't do consistent maintenance, and we absolutely do. We have schedules that we go in and put new air conditioning filters in. We do water filters. We go in and paint schools, redo schools on a constant basis. But a lot of these systems, air conditioning systems is a great example of this. Just doing yearly maintenance is not going to offset the effects of time on these
Units,
systems.
the whole
That's
systems,
right.
right.
An air conditioning system is typically expected to last 15 years. We have some in our schools right now that are pushing 25, 30, 35 years. So they're at their maximum time where they have to be replaced. And so when you replace these things, they're not cheap replacements. We're looking at a replacement of some air conditioning units at one of our elementary schools, and it's over $4.5 million to
Just
go in,
for the
just
HVAC.
for the HVAC
Wow.
systems
Yeah.
alone to go in and fix them because they're operating at well past their length of time. We run a very good budget here. We run a very tight budget here.
It's very conservative,
It's
yes.
very conservative. Well, we also provide what we need.
Absolutely.
And so you just can't make big money decisions like this when you have to put money into other areas like student academic achievement. And so this is how we get our school districts arrive at these kinds of things.
And you kind of talked about the age of units, but I also think it's the average age of a school typically is what?
Most schools in Texas right now replace their schools somewhere around 30 to 35 years. Our 2 elementary schools we're talking about replacing North Side and South Side are 70 plus years old.
Right.
In Angleton, our plan coming out of the facility audit was to look to replace schools at 45 to 50 years of age.
Okay. So extending past that 30.
Extending past that 30
average
to
in
35, yes.
Texas.
We
Okay.
believe we can keep them going longer than that by doing good maintenance on them. And that's what our facility audit shows, that if we go and make repairs, continue to put money into these things, that we can keep our schools going that long to not to have to go in and replace them on that 30-year rotation.
Sure.
It's kind of what we look at.
And part of the facilities study audit, you said we took it from there to, I know we went into a steering committee of community members.
Right. So what we came out of the facility audit is we presented that to the board. And we
Right.
said, look, here's all this, just the schools, to go in and repair them was about $217 million. And what do we want to do? If we were to call a bond for $217 million, the effect would most likely be we would have to raise the tax rate. And we've kind of made that promise to our voters is we will operate within the boundaries of not raising the tax rate.
Yeah.
So what the board told us to do is we proposed to the board, let's put together a 15-member Citizens Advisory Committee to meet in the fall to kind of bring this information in and kind of narrow the focus and then make a decision of, do we want to carry it forward to a larger Citizens Advisory Committee, which is what we did with the 19 and 22 bond. So we actually went in and added an additional step to all of this. That group met last fall, about a year ago, and they said, yes, we think we should move this forward, but we think you need to narrow it down to about somewhere between $180 and $190 million, which was replace the 3 schools, plus some additional money to go in and fix some of the other schools that we have that don't need replacement, but do need some repairs made to them. And they said, yes, take this on to the larger committee. And so we moved it on to the larger committee. In the spring of last year, that group came forward and said, no, just go out for a bond referendum for $150 million to replace North Side, South Side, Angleton Junior High, and let's find other methods, other ways to reinvest money into fixing the issues at other schools. And that's what this plan that we're bringing forward on a bond referendum is to do, is to simply just replace those 3 schools. And other repairs that need to be made to other schools will be made through savings through other bonds or savings that we've had in local fund balances that we'll go in and do those things with.
And I know part of that CAC, the Citizens Advisory Committee, the larger one, was a survey that went out to the community as well.
Yes.
And that brought up some significant moves for the Citizens Advisory Committee to then have input to make the decision.
So we put out about a 20-question survey last May, I believe. There were 3 very important questions that the Citizens Advisory Committee, the Spring Committee, looked at, and that was, how did the community feel about replacing North Side, replacing South Side, and replacing Angleton Junior High? Those results came back on the 2 elementary schools about 70% favorable, and on the junior high about 65% favorable. I think the thing that was really important about this is the people who went in and filled out the survey, the vast majority of people who filled it out were over the age of 45 and were registered voters. And so that's typically people who go vote in elections. And I think the Citizens Advisory Committee saw that and said, yes, let's move this forward. Let's make a recommendation to the board to go out for a November bond referendum on those 3 schools. They did that, made that recommendation to the board. The board approved that and called for the bond referendum election that's coming up in a few weeks.
Yeah, having a lot of the community really drive this. It was what they decide is where we're going. We're not going past what they decide.
Yeah, it's been interesting. Like I said, we've done this in 19, we've done it in 22, and now we've done it in 25. And I can tell you, in each one of those circumstances, what we've initially presented to that large Citizens Advisory Committee and what the referendum actually ended up being are not the same things. And so we listen to that group tremendously. They have a lot of impact in what we do. This time around, we initially presented $190 million, replace these 3 schools, fix up the other schools. And they said, no, just do the
just those 3 replacements.
In 22, it was, the presentation was build an additional elementary school and replace South Side and North Side at that time. And that committee said, no, we think the Angleton Junior High is too big. We want a second junior high to reduce the class sizes, or excuse me, to reduce the enrollment in those schools. And so that's what we put forward to our community to vote on.
Okay, going into a little bit of the 25 bond specifics. You've already, we know it's replacing the 3 schools, North Side, South Side, and AJH. Reasons behind that, what were the problems that you saw coming out of the facility study that hit maybe some safety, things like that, equity in classrooms?
So the biggest issue we saw at Angleton Junior High, because I think it's a little bit different than what we're talking about the 2 elementary schools, was they have a tremendous amount of their operational systems that just are failing horribly. We see that with air conditioning units at that school. The units are old, they're not pulling the moisture out of the air, so you're getting mold. You've got a roof that's leaking, and which then gets water into the building and creates problems with tiles, things like that.
It's more than just the tiles and the cosmetic of it. It's the structure.
Well, it's the structure in the roof that does that. It ruins the tiles. It ruins the floor. All those kinds of things happen
on a regular,
constant basis. One of the biggest problems we have at Angleton Junior High is the condition of the water pipes in the ceiling of our school. And that kind of manifests itself in a couple of ways. The first way is drinking water that comes out the water fountains that the kids drink has so much sediment in it due to the pipes, the condition of the pipes, that we put filters into all of our drinking fountains. We did a big renovation project on every drinking fountain in the district to put filters in there to filter the water that kids are drinking. At Angleton Junior High, we have to replace those filters every month due to the sediment that comes through the pipes. And so there's a cost there that we're constantly doing. Otherwise, the water pipes will drain up, water won't come out of the faucets.
Okay.
Another issue we see is we're seeing these pipes bust on a consistent basis, and they are busting and flooding the schools. We've had this now happen the last 3 times. We'll have a pipe burst. It'll start to flood a classroom. We'll go in to turn the valve off to shut the water off to that part of the building so we can clean it up. And the valve is so rusted, we either can't turn it or it falls apart as we're turning it and the water doesn't get turned off. So now what we have to do is go out to the road and turn off the water to the whole school.
All the water, yeah.
And then and so that takes time. We've had damage to classrooms, damage to desks, damage to student papers, damage to teacher supplies, damage to student supplies that we use due to the water pipes that burst in that school. So those are the big things we see at Angleton Junior High. Just the systems are so old and they're having to be maintained on a consistent basis. And they're costing us a lot of money. We spend more maintenance money at Angleton Junior High than we do anywhere else.
Right. Only place that has in the district, only
Right.
school that has a dedicated maintenance worker because of the issues, right?
That's exactly right. There's some,
Yeah.
yes, they have a dedicated maintenance worker to be there every day, all day, to solve the problems that these things create. That doesn't include other maintenance men we have to pull in when these big issues happen. Now, the two elementary schools is a little bit different situation. They're very old. We see some of the same breakdown in the systems that we see there. But what you also see there is an educational equity issues. Those schools were built in the 50s. The hallways are smaller, the classrooms are smaller. Then if you go out and look at the two new schools, those classrooms are much larger. And even some of our schools like Westside, Frontier, Rancho, which are somewhat newer, they almost have 150 square feet more in every classroom than you see at Southside and Northside. It was really interesting the other day. We were walking Southside and we walked into a room and I counted 16 kids and the room was just packed. You could not move in there.
Yeah.
So 16 kids and a teacher. Now they have to have stations, they have to have cubbies, they have to have all those things. They need to have carpet time. This is an early grade class that had this. And so the carpet time was just squeezed into a corner. We were out at the new school, Heartland. We walked into a classroom of 21 kids and there's vast amount of more room. There's carpet time, there's center time, there's small group areas.
Right.
There's plenty of room for those kinds of things that just don't exist at these other schools. And it affects the students' ability to get a equal education as some of our other kids in other schools. And we believe very strongly in educational equity here in our school district. We believe it doesn't matter what school a kid goes to, they should reach the same level of education, same level of passion, commitment from our
and
staff.
have the same opportunities.
And we see that.
Yeah.
We see the same opportunities. When you look at our accountability ratings throughout the district, our schools are almost all the same because we're very effective at providing that educational equity. And so when we see schools like Northside and Southside having that ability to be equal and having the same resources to those students, we believe is very important. I think the other thing that we go into those schools is they're so old they don't have quite the ability to have they don't have the same safety features that we can put in other schools.
Right.
And you've heard us talk about the film on the windows. We can't do those things. And I hear people ask me, well, why don't you just go replace the windows? Well, to replace the windows is not just take out some panes of glass and put new panes of glass in. You have to affect the whole structure of the building. Those windows go up into the roof, they go down into the foundation.
That's
And so
major.
it's a major
That's
issue,
major.
very costly issue to do that. It would be a significant amount of money, millions and millions of dollars to do that kind of a repair.
Also time. Because
Yes, and time. Well, the other thing is you have to shut the school down
Okay.
while you did that. And we just don't have the ability to shut the school down because it would be longer than a 2 to 3 month project that we would do in the summer.
Got it.
So those are the big issues we see at those two schools.
And that's that safety pane again that helps with reducing time for some intruder of some sort.
Right. If they were to fire a handgun or a gun into the school, the amount of time that they would have to shatter the glass or to get in through that way is much less reduced if we were able to put that film on those windows.
And there's a lot of information I know already out there about
Right.
that. So I'm gonna move into another hot topic related to the bond, which is tax rate and the effect of the bond on taxpayers.
Right. I think this is a great question, and we're trying to be very transparent about what the effect of this is.
Right.
I think the first thing that we always tell people is that also on the November ballot is the legislature is asking for a constitutional amendment to move the homestead exemption from $100,000 to $140,000. We support that, and we suspect it will pass. If it does pass, and what that means is if a home is worth $250,000, you're going to take $140,000 off that, and instead of getting taxed on $250,000, you only get taxed on $110,000, 250 minus the 140. So it significantly reduces the school tax bill that our community will see. In general, that's going to be between what we've lowered the tax rate and what that homestead exemption would do. Is most of our homeowners will see around a $400 amount of savings on their school tax bill just from the homestead exemption and just from us lowering the tax rate. So that's very important, we think. So people are going to see whether this bond passes or not, that kind of a reduction on their school tax
regardless,
bill.
right.
Regardless.
Yeah.
Bond can pass, you're still going to see that reduction. So in 2026, the school tax rate is either going to be $1.02 or lower, no matter if the bond were to pass or not to pass. That's not going to change because that's due to if the bond passes, when we would sell the bonds and when it would affect the tax rate. You won't see any effect of the bond not passing until 2027. So if the bond passes again in 2027, the tax rate is going to be $1.02 or less. If the bond were not to pass, you would most likely see a 4-cent reduction in the tax rate from the school district. And that's going to be about somewhere between $70 and $80 worth of savings. So people are going to get $400 worth of savings from the homestead exemption and what we've already dropped the tax rate. We're just asking our community to not get that additional $70 to $80 in 27 off their tax bill, and instead to invest that back into our schools, back into our students. It's about $8 to $12 a month is what we're asking. Again, it's not additional money they're going to have to pay. We're just asking them to not get that large of a decrease in their tax bill. They're going to see a decrease. If the bond were to pass, they just would not see as large a decrease
making the curve into investing if you were to do it.
Right. And like I said, again, it's about $8 to $12 a month is what we're asking people to not get that amount of savings.
Okay. I think the other thing that I think sometimes making sure our taxpayers, our citizens, our community understands the tax, that the district is about the school tax rate, and then the different entities that play into your tax bill.
Right. There are 3 different entities that affect your property tax bill.
Yeah.
The school district is a taxing entity. What we do is we set the tax rate. This is how much you're going to be taxed per $1,000 evaluation of your home. Right now it's $1.02. Again, it was $1.45 in 2018. So we have consistently lowered that tax rate. The other entity that plays a part in this is the appraisal district, and they appraise the value of your home. And so they appraise what your home is worth, take the homestead exemption off, multiply it times the tax rate, and that's what you get your school tax bill to be. There's a third entity out there that does play a factor in this as well, and that comes from Austin, now the Comptroller's Office from the Texas state government. The Comptroller's Office every year puts out what's called a property value study, and it says for every taxing entity there is in a state, this is what your property values have to achieve. It should be this number. So that exists. They put out a property value study for Angleton ISD, Brazosport ISD, the city of Angleton, the county of Brazoria. Everybody gets one. What the appraisal district has to do is achieve 95% of what the Comptroller's Office says that property value study has to be. And if they don't achieve that, then the state will not pay the money they owe into these taxing entities, into the school district. Okay, they don't fully fund.
You don't get that funding.
We don't get fully funded if that happens. So if you remember a couple of years ago, we saw property values go up about 18, 20, 22%. That was due to homes were selling for more money, and the state comptroller's office said the property values need to be this much. So the appraisal district came in and set them up that high, and that's when people saw the values raised.
Taxes.
This last year, we didn't see a lot of that. In fact, we saw very little. Most people's property values, appraisal values, were about the same as it was the year before because the property value said it was very close to the same number. In fact, we only saw about 5% property value growth, and that was mainly due to new homes in the district. Okay, so those 3 entities play a huge part in this as about what your school tax bill is. And there's something else I'd just like to remind people that's really important. You hear all the time from politicians, you hear it from other people, is if you don't agree with what your appraisal value on your home is you have the right to appeal that.
Right.
If you appeal it, it does not affect the property value study. So if you appeal it and the number comes in lower, we still meet the conditions of the property value test. And so that's why you always hear people say, appeal your appraisal value. I can tell you, my home that I own, I appeal it every year because it does not affect what the money would send to the state, and it may lower my tax bill. And so it's a very, very important thing for people to understand and know.
And we have nothing to do with the appeal
process. We have nothing to do with the appeal process either.
Yeah.
But it is something that people need to take advantage of through all of this. But I'll just end with this. It's important to know the school district sets the tax rate. That's all we do, and we have lowered that tax rate over time.
And I think people are getting this, but tax rate is split with the INS and the M&O,
right.
and bonds cannot be called for like salaries and things like that.
We cannot pay teacher salaries out of that. We cannot pay cost of fuel out of that. We cannot pay electricity bills out of that. There are only certain things that you can pay bonds out of. Usually it's capital outlay items, buildings, You can buy new buses. Some people
Some
do
vehicles,
that. You can do projects that are going to last, things that are going to last more than 2, 3, 4 years. That's all you can do with bond money.
Not something that's a recurring.
That's
kind
right.
of
So
cost.
teacher salaries are a recurring cost every year.
Electricity bills recurring all the
That's
time.
right.
Yeah. So we've talked a lot about the tax rate staying at the 1.2. So then explain ballot language to voters, because there is a key thing on the ballot that people will see.
Yeah, you're going to see on the ballot that this is a tax increase. Tax rate's going to stay the same. It's not going to go up. But that language is there for two reasons. One, the legislature says it has to be there. And the reason they say it has to be there is the second reason, which is to say if the bond were not to pass, your tax bill would most likely go down. And we've said, yes, it would most likely go down 4 cents in 27.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You're still going to get a reduction again from the homestead exemption, but it would most likely, you'd see a further reduction if the bond were not to pass.
So that is language that'll be there. We're just very open, making sure people understand that and why it's there. Pulling away from the tax stuff, let's talk specifically about other schools in the district. You're only seeing Northside, Southside, and Angleton Junior High on this bond, but what about the needs? Because you said the facility studies said there were needs at all the campuses. So what about the other campuses?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we've been able to do, and this is kind of how we've worked this, is we've been able to save quite a bit of money from the 2022 bond. A big part of that was when we bid the bond for those two schools, when we estimated what the cost would be. We were coming out of COVID. Inflation was very, very high. And so we estimated those things to make sure we could cover any possible cost. What happened is we started to get into the design process and the actual going out and getting construction bids processes. You saw construction costs flatline. Now they've even started to go down a little bit further. They're now bidding out schools in the Gulf Coast at less per square foot cost than what we built Heartland and Heritage for. So construction
just
costs
different time.
It's just different time. Construction costs are coming down. So that has saved us around $41 million, both through construction cost and unspent bond money that we have to go. We still have some other projects to go and do. What we're going to do with that money is this. We still have probably $8 to $10 million of other projects we've committed to doing that we're going to go finish doing. The other things that we're going to do is we're going to take about $5 million of that and we're going to go in and pay off debt that we owe. In essence, giving money back to the taxpayers. That is why when you hear me say I believe that the tax rate from $1.02 will go lower, because when we pay off that debt, that's the most likely effect that it's going to happen. And so most likely what you're going to see is once we do that, you'll see the tax rate lower anywhere from 0.5 cent to 4 cents lower. Okay. So we expect to continue to lower tax rate. Again, as more homes get built, we expect to continue to lower the tax rate. That's what our board and we really focus on trying to do that. So that's going to happen. And then the rest of it will be about a $25 to $30 million allocation into schools like Rancho, Frontier, West Side, Central. Cats, Angleton High School will get some of that money to go in and fix the things that were the most urgent repairs in those schools that came out through the facility audit. And so we're going to, again, put that money into fixing those schools so that every school has facilities that'll last longer. We believe if we repair those schools, we then can hit those longer time frames for those buildings to be
not
in
needing
existence.
to replace them.
Not need to replace them anytime soon. In fact, we're looking at replacement of those schools, if we believe if we do this, sometime around in the 2040 decade, probably 2045 is when we look at. So a good 20 more years out of those buildings easily is what we think we can achieve.
And the rough estimate on the savings again, because that kind of came after construction with the two schools was really done. Absolutely. We didn't know how much it was. What was it again?
Right now, the construction of the two schools is about $128 million, and we are still seeing some savings from that because you built into that $128 million contingency money, so when things go wrong, you have the money to go fix it. Mm-hmm. These two schools were built, it went very, very smoothly. Mm-hmm. We ran into almost no problems in which we had to go in and fix things. Well, I mean, sometimes you start digging up dirt and you don't know what you're going to get, right? Yeah. And things went really, really well. Sometimes stuff happens. You get an ice storm and it damages parts of the building, and we didn't have those things happen for the most part. And so we still have a lot of contingency money as part of that as well. And so several $1 million from that. And so I think and the way we build buildings, they're economical, but they're a great product. They're good schools that will last long for our community, but they're not Taj Mahals. All of those factors play into us saving the money and being able to spend bond money down debt, bring the debt down, and reinvest it in other schools.
You touched on debt already, but do you want to maybe explain that a little bit? Because that is a harder idea, because how I see debt may not be how a school district sees debt.
Well, and most people think of debt like they think of their homeowners, right? You want to reduce the amount of debt you have so that you can get it paid off.
I don't like personal debt. Yeah.
Right, and that's still what we try to do. We don't want as much debt. We'd like to get it paid off as quickly as possible, and we try to do that. We pay it off as quickly as possible. I think it's important to note a couple of things. There are almost over 1,100 school districts in the state of Texas. There are only 3 school districts in the whole state that have zero debt.
Interesting.
Most school districts have some form of debt that they have. Any school district that is growing like we're growing is going to have debt, because the way you grow a business is you take on debt to grow the business and pay it off. School districts are much like that. If you're going to grow, it means you're going to bring in more students, which is more revenue. Then you're going to have to take on some debt so that you can have facilities in which to house those students
and accommodate that,
and accommodate those students.
Right.
And so that's what we're in. I believe this bond will increase our debt levels, but when you look at comparative districts that are growing like we're growing, Alvin, Waller, Magnolia, Montgomery County Schools, Willis, we will still have, if this bond were to pass, we will still have significantly less amount of debt than those school districts will have. Brazosport, even if we pass, we will have less debt than a district like Brazosport has. Alvin, Pearland, we will still have less debt than those districts. But again, when you're growing, to have these facilities, you have to take on some level of debt to get that accomplished.
Another question we often get is where the schools, North Side, South Side, Angleton Junior High, where are they going to be built? Because do we have to pay for land to build them? And if it were to pass, where would we put them? And when would they open? So
first thing is North Side and South Side are easy where we're going to put them. We have large fields out beside them. We're going to build the schools. Kids will go to school in the old school. When new school gets built, one of the great things is we don't have to go buy new furniture, new computers, anything. We're just going to pick up all that stuff in those schools and move it over there, and the kids over there, and then we'll come in and demo those schools and build a parking lot, more playground space, things like that.
So no interruption in that education.
Right, Angleton Junior High would be very similar to that. We'll either build it out by where the softball field is, that front parking lot on Henderson, or the side parking lot out by Wildcat Stadium off of Downing Street. Either in the front or the back is kind of where we will go with that. And a lot of it will depend on where utilities are, what's the best economical way to do that, what's the best way to do that without interrupting school, those kinds of things. If the bond were to pass, then we'll get into those kinds of
Yeah, you don't do it until once, because that's a
well, it's a cost if you're going to do that right now, right?
Yes.
And so we're not going to go incur that cost until the bond were to pass.
If it were to pass,
If it were to pass.
Right. When would we see them open? When would that construction begin, and when would we see the schools open?
Most likely we'll see construction start in this summer, 2026, and you would you will see the schools open in August of 28. So about a 2-year window to get the schools built.
Okay. Let's talk about what would happen. You kind of already touched on it some, but what would happen if the bond were not to pass? What are the plans? You talked about if it weren't to pass, taxpayers would see that 4-cent reduction in 2027. But what are the plans with these schools if it were not to pass?
So what we would then do is go and take that savings we have from the 22 bond, a little bit of savings that we have from the 19 bond, which is now just about out. We've pretty much spent all that. We would then have to reinvest those into those 3 schools because they have major issues. We've got to fix the pipes at Angleton Junior High. That has to be done, and that's all going to be a very large expense. Somewhere most likely $8 to $10 million is what we believe.
So redistribution of those savings.
So we'd take that savings and put those into those types of facilities.
And not that the other schools wouldn't still get something.
Well, some of them, they would get some, they would just not get as much.
To reduce that list.
So for example, West Side, right now, if the bond were to pass, West Side will see an allocation of about $9 million. If the bond were not to pass, you'd see an allocation of about $3.5 to $4 million. That would go in to fix their air conditioning systems, but they would not see some of the other systems get addressed. We're going to have to go in and address systems at South Side, address systems at North Side with that money we have. And so that's what would happen, is the majority of that money would go into those 3 schools to be able to get them repairable so that they will last a little bit longer.
And we have plans regardless. I mean, that's the point. So we have plans regardless because we understand this. This is the voters' right to speak. This is their choice on whether it passes or not.
You've heard me say that many, many times, is we're going to respect what our community tells us to do here. I've seen school districts who a bond will fail and they'll go out the next year, or within 6 months they'll go out again, and a year again. And that's
with the same thing.
With the same thing.
Yeah.
That is not our plan here. The community says no, then the community says no, and then we will enact this plan. If the community says yes, then we will enact this plan. And so we're going to listen to what our community says, and we respect what our community has to tell us.
Speaking of the community in voting, I think making sure who can vote in this election.
So anybody who lives in Angleton ISD,
the boundaries of Angleton
and
ISD,
is registered to vote, the boundaries of Angleton ISD. So that can be Rocheron, that's Bonnie, that's Demi John.
Oh, okay.
Any of those places, Bailey's Prairie, you are eligible to vote in Angleton ISD this bond election. Very simple. If you have kids who go to Angleton ISD schools or zoned to go to Angleton ISD schools, you can vote in the election, in the bond referendum. If you don't have kids, but you have kids who live around you that go to Angleton ISD schools and you're a registered voter, you can go vote most likely in the Angleton ISD.
I think people
bond.
Get confused and think it's just an Angleton proper city kind of thing, but it is Angleton ISD reaches 400 square miles.
And it's really interesting. We border Santa Fe, we border Hitchcock, we border Bradgesport, we border Columbia Resort. Oh yeah, we border Fort Bend County as well, and so it's a very large area.
Geographically, we're very large. Yeah. I want to touch on a couple other things, but I'll just go ahead and lead into this one. So we talk about growth, and you talk about developments and things like that, and understanding as the developments are starting to take root and take place, we then look at, okay, what does that look like in terms of school needs? It's not the opposite really, but will the district be looking at another bond to cover that growth down the road?
I think that's something the district will have to address at some point. I'll say a couple of things. First thing is, I always put this out there, is we don't build schools and then homeowners come in or home developers come in and start building homes. It's the completely opposite. They're going to come in and build homes, and we have to have the schools ready.
We have to have it ready for the bodies.
Well, our philosophy in Angleton is, doesn't matter who you are, when you show up, if you show up and you're going to go to our schools, then we're going to give you a quality education.
Right.
So that's off the table. That's what we're going to do. So if kids come, we're going to educate them. It helps to have buildings in which to educate them in, so that class sizes aren't 40, 45 kids in a classroom. And so that's what we try and do. We believe that's what our community wants us to do. Growth is going to continue to happen. We know that. We talk to developers all the time. And we know there's 12,000 rooftops that are going to start up in the next 4, 5, 6 years. That's going to happen. I think it's really interesting right now. We did a demographic study last year, and we had enrollment predictions of what we thought we were going to be at this year, and we are already exceeding those enrollment predictions. So we're about 110% over what we thought we would be at. 2 elementary schools on the north side of town, Frontier and Heartland, are over 140% of what we predicted them to be. We're actually looking at enrollment numbers that we did not think we would achieve until 2027. And so we're ahead of that curve a little bit. We still have plenty, though, of classroom seats to take that growth in at this time. At some point, most likely by the end of the decade, there's going to have to be new decisions made by the community and by our school districts about what do you do as these continued homes come into play. What do we do? What kind of facilities do we have to meet their needs? Again, what our Citizens Advisory Committee has said is we like elementary schools to be about 800. That's larger than what our current elementary schools are, except for Heartland, so that we can take in more kids there, and our junior highs to be about 1,200. And so as we start to reach those limits, then we'll have to go back out to the community and make decisions. What do you wish for us to do to meet the needs of these new students coming in? And so we'll most likely go through that same process. And so this is very likely to be taking place, this same conversation of growth in Angleton ISD specifically, over the next 10 to 15 years. This is going to have to be addressed. So you see places like Alvin, Cy-Fair, those same kinds of things. Katy, Fort Bend is going through this right now. Lamar Consolidated is going through it right now. That's what's coming to Angleton, and so this will be an issue that has to be addressed long term and for many, many years to come.
Before I ask my kind of last question for this segment, I do want to touch on, again, voters right, to choose? Yes or no
Yep.
on the bond? That's up to them. Early voting does start October 20th, runs,
Correct.
I think, through October 31st. And then the election is Tuesday, November 4th.
That's correct, yes.
And so just wanted to get those important dates out there. But I know we spent the whole time talking about bond. That was the whole point of this. And I do have a question that I couldn't get all the questions on here from the community. I inserted some of them into the bond stuff because I think those came in related to bond and just included them. But, I had another community question when I asked if they wanted to know anything unrelated, and wanted to know about pep rallies for sports other than football. Can you, question was, why don't junior highs and high schools hold pep rallies for sports other than football? What can you say about that, Mr.
It's
Edwards?
a great question. We like having activities for our students to go to that are outside the regular school day. We like things that enhance Wildcat pride, Wildcat spirit, which is why you see activities like pep rallies, and they've gone on for many, many years. I went to them when I was in high school. One of the things we have to be very careful about is to make sure that we don't interrupt too much into the academic day. Kids need to be in class because that's what our most important thing is to do. But we do think there's opportunities that schools should look to make sure we support all our groups, and pep rallies is a way to get that done. I will tell you, sitting from the superintendent's office, and I don't mean to pass the buck, but it's just very clearly this is how we do these things, is pep rally schedules or decisions are made at the campus level. And so I think if a community member has that concern or has that question, and it's a very, very valid question, they should speak to their school principal. And I think letting the school principal know this is what we'd like to do, giving kids an opportunity to be recognized and to perform is a great thing. And I think most campus principals will work to accommodate, listen to that and work to accommodate those kinds of things. We like to recognize all of our students, and we have great students who have incredible skills that we like to showcase.
And I appreciate our community members for submitting their questions and some topic ideas that they have that we'll look into for our future episodes. Really quickly, do you want to touch on anything else? Maybe what does AISD have on the horizon besides bond? I know a heavy focus on that, but there are other things great happening in the district.
Yeah, absolutely. We've had a great start to the school. We've got the band who's going. We're recording this on Thursday, and they go to their first regional contest this evening, and to be able to start that advancement process, hopefully to go back to the state marching contest. They've got a great show. It looks wonderful.
They have a lot to live off of from last year. They did such a great job last year.
So we have that going on. Our football team's doing really, really well. Our tennis team was in the playoffs, and we're going to start rolling up the winter activities, basketball, those kinds of things will get going here very soon. The volleyball team is doing really, really well. And so you see those things going on to high school. You see students who represents us in many great ways and many great things.
I mean, we have a wonderful musical coming up this year. I'm excited, but they're doing Chicago, the teen edition, Chicago. I love it. I'm excited for that one.
Yeah, we saw an example of a young lady singing at our State of the District yesterday, and it was absolutely fantastic.
Oh, yeah, wonderful.
And we have great things going on in our elementary schools that we see going on as well. The two junior highs are working really well together. They actually got to play each other in some athletic competitions, and that went really great. We appreciate everybody being there for that.
No set rivalries is what
I'm hearing. That's right.
And
we're seeing great things.
We're all Wildcats.
We're seeing great things go on in our elementary schools. I know Westside tonight has a mother-son Western dance. And
fun, yeah.
So like I said, great activities. Going to school is more than just that 8 hours each day is spent in the classroom, which is very, very important, but we love to extend our opportunities, love to see our kids perform, and love to bring our communities into our schools. And so the best place to go to find out what's going on is go to our AISD website, look at the calendar.
Social media pages, absolutely, yeah.
And you can see those kinds of things that are going on. We know the bond's dominating right now, but lots of great things going on in Angleton ISD, so please take an opportunity to check those things out.
I do want to shout out, I know, this dates the episode a little bit, but we have had some success already at the fair, even though this year's 2025 Brazoria County Fair hasn't even taken place yet, but our junior Cheyenne Land, who's at Angleton High School, was crowned the 2025 Rodeo Queen. I want to give a shout out to Cheyenne. We're super excited about that. Thanks for bringing us the crown, Cheyenne. I just want to thank you, Mr. Edwards, for joining us for this episode. I know it was lengthy and it gave a lot of details about the bond, but I feel like we got to get some information out there and let our citizens make their choice. And I want to thank you again for being part of this episode, Mr. Edwards. Thanks.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to come out and explain things. And again, we see people who speak for the bond. We see people who speak against the bond. We appreciate and respect all those comments and everybody's position on this.
So thanks to Mr. Edwards, thanks to Alex Radow, our producer, and Mr. Scott Faradosi at the high school, one of our wonderful band directors who has provided the music for us. As always, this is Hannah Chalmers, and stay excellent, Wildcats.